Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the third annual California College Affordability Summit. My name is Gil Compton. I work with the Riverside County Office of Education, and I will be your moderator and tech for this breakout session. I'm here to provide virtual support for both you and the presenters during this presentation. All attendees have been muted so that we ask that you put your questions in the chat or at the end of the presentation. If time allows, we can also raise our hand on the icon and we'd be happy to unmute you at that time to be able to ask questions. Should you have any questions or need assistance with the Zoom interface, you can use the chat icon on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, search for my name, Gil Compton, and send a direct private message to me. I will do my best to provide assistance to resolve your concern. It's my pleasure to now introduce to you our presenters. I'm going to introduce our lead this morning and the presenters for the sessions. Okay, and so the first person I'd like to introduce is Quay Dorsey with West Ed. He's going to take us through this morning's presentation. Again, we're here to support you. Thank you so much for joining us. Quay?
Thank you, Gil. Hello, everybody. My name is Quay Dorsey. My role is Senior Program Manager at West Ed. I do a lot of sort of college access evaluation and data work across the state, and very happy to be here with you all today. In a minute, I'm going to give you a quick glance at what our agenda is going to be. We are going to move rapid fire through this because we have 50 minutes. I open as many questions as possible in the chat. I have a wonderful team of colleagues who are going to help answer those questions in the chat. And there'll be opportunity along the way to sort of get questions answered. But I want to start with some quick introductions here. So again, my name is Quay Dorsey from West Ed, representing a third of the organizations who are sort of leading this work. I want to pass it over to Jacqueline at uAspire to introduce her and Holly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jacqueline Pinheiro. I am the CEO of uAspire. We are a national nonprofit doing a lot of work here in California as well, focused on creating affordable pathways to college with a laser technical focus on financial aid. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Holly, to introduce herself really quickly.
Hi, everyone. So wonderful to be here. I'm the Chief Knowledge Officer at uAspire, and looking forward to this session. Thank you.
And now I want to pass it over to my colleague, Joanne at CCGI.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Joanne Doe. I'm the Senior Director of Technical Assistance, User Support, and Training over at the California College Guidance Initiative.
Awesome. Joanne, there's no one else from CCGI I need to introduce here, right? All right. Thank you. And then my co-presenter here today, I'm going to let Yvonne introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Yvonne Olivares. I'm a research scientist and methodologist, and I'm on the team supporting usability studies and how to get down to making things work better for end users.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for being here, and thank you for those introductions. So before we get into and tell you sort of why we are here, why we're creating this website, you've read a little bit. I want to start with right off the bat with a quick question. And the question is, what's the best strategy you've seen a school, counselor, or district implement towards financial aid completion? So this link is coming in the chat, but you can also access it by typing the bit.ly below. If you just on that first slide can just post a quick post-it to answer this question, that'd be great. And we'll take just about a minute or two to do that. All right, I'm seeing a couple of people starting to add in here. Mhm. Mhm. All right, I'm going to just read a couple highlights and then feel free to keep on adding to this slide. And by highlights, I just mean examples. All of them are great strategies. So I'm seeing someone saying one strategy is actively monitoring the web grants portal to run reports to see who has and hasn't submitted. I've seen that all across the state for sure. Workshop for parents and students. I hear a lot about when you engage parents, how helpful it is to the whole process. That's right. Make it a class assignment. Getting one-on-one help, whether it be a counselor or a teacher or another trusted staff member in the school building. These are all great strategies. Feel free to keep adding here because we're going to work towards understanding sort of why this is important to us. Share my screen again. All right, so what are we doing here? Why do we have this? So Wested is working with uAspire and CCGI to sort of build an implementation. We're sort of we have an overall project where we're working to understand the current state of strategies and implementation towards FAFSA for all that are currently happening around the state. And part of that is we would like to provide sort of insight on a website and from what we got from this pilot site, but also we want to build a site that sort of helps people understand financial aid legislation overall, particularly AB469, but there are others that have come out around it, AB737, for example, and links to key policy sites and updates. That's one sort of like small portion that we'd like to include on the site. One of the bigger parts of this site is to sort of engage counselors and district leaders and other people who are working with students to get them to complete the financial aid and to sort of help understand what their readiness is to sort of implement the requirements behind this policy. And then we'd like this site to compile and provide tailored resources to support the needs of LEAs across the state. All right, so our timeline so far has been starting back in December, the implementation team, that's uAspire, CCGI, and Wested, has been interviewing a diverse group of district leaders and counselors to sort of understand what they are doing. We've also interviewed key leadership, for example, folks at CSEC to sort of understand what their needs might be for a website. And we here at Wested started to sort of like do some design thinking around what that might mean, what the needs are. Excuse me, sorry about that. That should not say, look, I'm seeing a typo here. So from April to June, we are participating in a sort of feedback from the field and getting many people in the field to give us feedback, whether it be at a conference like this or whether it be in a one-on-one meeting. And then we hope to sort of release version 1 between July and August before the school year starts and the tracking around AB469 begins. And again, sorry for that typo on the second timeline block. Okay, so now I want to ask a different question. And we're going to go back to the Jamboard and you're going to go to the second slide. And that question is, what obstacles do you foresee in implementing AB 469 at your school, district, and within your community? Again, the Jamboard link is below. It's the same as before. All right, please feel free to keep adding them in the chat. I'm going to go over a couple of them here that I am seeing. I'm seeing that one of the obstacles is sort of having information or being unaware about AB469 and having the staff to actually implement the work. That's going to be a key piece of this. Students and families are opting out a lot, and I think so. They have that option for sure, and I think that might be an obstacle along the way when you're trying to promote college access across your school. If a lot of people are opting out, for sure. 450 student caseload, hard to do with not enough counselors, for sure. Yeah. I'm seeing lots of really good things. Please keep them coming here. Our goal is to learn as much as we can, so our design sort of informs what happens, like how you all get the website in the fall. All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep on going to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk, before we get into showing some images and talking a bit more about what's sort of what we are envisioning so far. I want to talk about what our sort of main concepts are and components of the site. So when we sought this out, we thought it should be bold and motivational, because we thought it should be something that counselors and others want to act now, and it's a cause that is worth working towards. We thought it should be approachable and get right to the point. There are lots of sites and organizations around the state who are doing great work and have resources related to financial aid completion. Our goal is to help curate resources that sort of encompass a collective group of all the work that has been done around the state. We would like to put it somewhere where people can go to all of those different places, but have somewhere to know where to go. And also we have a really great designer here at West Day. Her name is Jennifer. I'm not sure if she's here today, but she's really great. And one of the things that she sort of thought was how to make it humanized and how to not reduce students to just the numbers behind financial aid for all, but actually like the point and pushing us towards like understanding what's going to make the people who are working with students be more engaged to get more results for students. And the main components of this site is going to be a resource library, some case studies, and a self-assessment tool. I'll talk about each of those things in a second. I'll warn you, I'm not going to show you each of those pages because they are not built, but I will show you examples of some things that are built. So for example, our homepage draft is built. And like I said, one of the things that we thought would be useful on the website is just to have a themed resource library where you can come get resources organized by your individual needs around financial aid, particularly towards getting financial aid for all under AB 469. We also thought that case studies, so these pilot sites that we've been interviewing and learning about and learning what's working, and also other sites that aren't a part of our pilot program, we're using information about what they are doing and sort of like grouping them by student types and region, and really helping others to figure out how they can relate to these regions or LEAs who are doing really great work and how they're getting it done, to sort of help and promote sort of group learning and student outcomes for all across the state. And then the last part, which is a pretty unique part we think about this site, aside from the curation of all the resources, is a self-assessment. And I want to talk a little bit about that now. So when we sought to like sort of figure out what do we do to make financial aid for all like possible, how do we help promote that? We first thought, what do people need? And we can think about that now before it happens, but there are going to be lots of LEAs that right from the start are going to, right from the start in the fall are going to be just thinking about what do I need? And that's okay. We recognize that's how schools work. That's how this system sort of works. And sometimes you got to just roll with the punches. To that end, we hope to sort of provide a self-assessment where people can quickly answer some questions, and then at the end they get tailored resource based on the scores that they received at the end. So, for example, there'll be a number of about 13 Likert questions as we currently have it seen. One example is on the screen. So, for example, one sort of indicator of how well you are doing towards this end is we set an annual FAFSA completion goal prior to the requirements of AB469, and that's well communicated across the district. So this is like it's asking, did you all already have a plan for this before this policy came in? And there's no judgment behind it, but instead it's like, if you had a plan, we're not going to provide you resources around goal setting around this. So at the end of this assessment, but if you have not had a plan, or if you are still thinking about a plan, we might provide you some goal setting templates and some other resources and some stories of what people have done to get started on thinking about those goals. And these questions are themed differently across the self-assessment. And feel free to put any questions about this or other things in the chat, and there are people there to answer when I can. And then at the end, you'll get a score. It'll tell you about your score, and then it will give you, under each of these categories, these expansion blocks, it won't be the same for every user. Based on how you score, you'll get a certain type of resources at the end, and you'll be able to save them as an export to a PDF or email the results to yourself by clicking that button there. All right. So before I go to the next slide, I'm just going to pause and see if there are questions that come through the chat, because we're about to switch gears a bit and switch presenters.
Hi, Quay, this is Jacqueline. There is one question that just came through. The question is there a discussion around loan forgiveness and how it relates to perceptions related to FAFSA and college debt?
There's not a current conversation within this, but that's the kind of feedback that we would like here. Yeah, Jack, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
Yep, no, that's exactly right. These kinds of questions that Dr. Lee just put in the chat is exactly what we need to hear. We are approaching this from a very targeted definition of the legislation on AB469. So that's why you'll see it set up in this way, but please, for other kinds of thoughts, requirements, tools that you're looking for, drop those into the chat, and we will be sure to take those from here and think about how it's best to either add to this site or provide those resources in a systematic and comprehensive way.
Yep, exactly. And you'll have the opportunity actually in just a minute. The rest of this time is going to be feedback time for us. You've seen a number of slides, you've seen something that was super quick, but now we want to just sort of get some ideas and give you the sort of floor to get information to us about how we can do this right. Yvonne?
All right, so Quay, can you take to the next slide? So for the rest of this sort of workshop, we want you to think about a specific obstacle that you're foreseeing with AB 469. I know that for some you're seeing a lot, but just focus on one obstacle that you're thinking about. Now go back over to the Jamboard and just go over to the next slide. And with that, I'd like you to think about what support that you're going to need to help overcome that particular obstacle. And this can be everything, any and everything that you can think of. You don't have to try to limit it to website, but just in general, what support would you need to overcome that obstacle that you're imagining?
And if Jamboard tells you that you're running out of space on a Post-it, you can add as many Post-its as you want.
We split up the Jamboards also by counselors, teacher, district leads, nonprofits. That way people can get a chance to really share as much as you'd like on there. If it takes you 7 Post-its to share the support you need, take 7 Post-its. And now while we're waiting for folks to go in, I see one person's adding them more comprehensive web grant reports. It'd be great. Can you go in and add an example of the kind of information that would be useful to have on there that's missing today? Can I ask a question? Well, if it's the same person who mentioned parents providing, getting parents to provide income information, is this related or is it different with the families who are opting out for the wrong reasons?
I'm the person who posted, and it's unrelated to the opt-out. It's one of the major barriers is that our students are filling it in, but the parents are not providing information, so the application remains incomplete.
Thank you for that.
I have follow-up to Mr. Escobar's comment about will we have to submit their GPAs? Can there be something in the CSAC reports that indicates that they have an opt-out? Is there like an option for like two-way communication so we can keep track as well?
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you, Dr. Lee. I'm noting that for the WestEd and CCGI team, I'm noting that in the document of other questions here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And thank you, Dr. Lee. That's a good point. Even I'm not watching the Jamboard. I'll just want to defer to you on the time on that.
I am watching the Jamboard.
All right.
All right. I'm going to give one more minute if anyone wants to add anything else. We're going to move on to the next one. Now, these Jamboards are going to stay up afterwards. So if something occurs to you after we're done today, please feel free to go back and add more on there. I'd ask today, though, just so that way, make sure that it actually gets read and digested. All right, so Quay, can you jump over to the next slide? All right, so now let's think, instead of just in general, let's think about online resources. What online resources would actually be useful for you? This includes existing online resources or resources you wish were more easily accessible online. As Quay mentioned, there are so many great resources that exist across the state. Unfortunately, they are spread across everywhere, and if you don't know that they exist, they're not easy to find. And part of the goal of this, a big part of this, is making sure everyone knows what the resources are available, and there are no districts that are missing out on information because they weren't aware. And so think about any sort of resources that you know or you wish existed, and maybe they do exist and you just aren't aware of them. What online resources would be useful? We're going to go back to that same Jamboard, and it looks like we're an all counselor group. So we're going to jump over to slide 7 on the Jamboard. And I will say, as someone whose school counselor made sure I graduated and eventually went to college and got my PhD, I love counselors, so I'm super happy we've got an all counselor group, almost all counselor group here. All right. Okay, so layer of complexity on the web grant reports, having to transform the text file into an Excel file. One location with the library of resources. So you'll be happy at the end of this, because that's the end goal here with the library. I'm going to give one more minute. All right, so let's go ahead and jump onto the last slide. Oh, looks like we still got a couple more coming in. Let's give it another minute. So it looks like we have in the chat, Terrence says here, we're not all counselor group. These issues need to be addressed by several stakeholders. One of the biggest issues I'm facing is getting counselors to engage other stakeholders in the process. Any thoughts, Terrence, on why that's an obstacle there in that sort of communication?
If I knew why it was an obstacle, I'd be able to solve it.
All right. Well, we've identified it as an obstacle, and we'll add that on there.
Terrence, can I just ask, which are the other specific stakeholders that you are thinking about, just so that we have the ecosystem in our minds based on your comment?
School administrators, central office staff, community-based organizations.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
Okay, I am a school counselor, and I appreciate even you making that mention of that. My perception is, since sometimes we won't have systems in place that says how a teacher can contribute, how a secretary can contribute, the various stakeholders, I don't know that I have the latitude to say, can you complete tasks A through C? Because I'm not in a supervisory position. But I will very clearly say if there was someone who expressed interest, as you just did, I would be able to tell them, these are the ways that you can help me. And I do send out emails and correspond, but without the one-on-one conversation, there's no way of knowing who actually is bought in and willing to contribute.
I imagine, Dr. Lee, I imagine that that's probably a similar situation in a lot of schools, that there aren't systems in place. And so that might be the obstacle.
No, I'm talking about the obstacle where staff who are willing to participate are told no.
Okay, so it looks like those might be two different things, but sort of a lack of systems and then maybe a lack of will. We'll make a note of it. Thank you, Terrence and Dr. Lee. All right, so I'm gonna let people can continue, but I wanna get over to the last slide so we have enough time for some Q&A. Quay, would you mind jumping over to the last one? As Quay mentioned, a big part of what we're in the middle right now is collecting feedback. And this is a tool that is for you. This is going to be made for you. And if you are interested in being able to provide feedback and you're not committing to any level of feedback, feedback could be as short as a 1 minute survey, or as long as a sort of 30-minute test run of something. You don't have to commit right now, but if you're interested in learning more or possibly providing feedback in the future, we'd love it if you would sign up to provide feedback. And I put it in the chat as well as it's up on the screen. And this is just a little input. It's a little feedback form, a place that you can just sign in for future. Like I said, this can be, you're not actually committing to anything. This is just you'd like to be contacted if there's something going on, and at that point you can decide if you'd be interested in participating. Like I said, it can be as short as a 1 minute survey or as long as a 30-minute test run through. Or it could just be being informed of where we are in the process, because a lot's going to be happening over the next few months. July and August are really around the corner. All right, so now I'd like to open it up to Q&A, and I'd like to leave this up in case folks have change their mind as we go through and want to jump on there too. Questions?
Do you want me to put it in the chat and then come out of share screen so we're like looking at each other?
It should be in the chat. Yeah, I can add it again into the chat. But go ahead and come out of the share screen so we can all see each other.
All right, so this is a perfect opportunity to sort of ask any lingering questions, any lingering thoughts, ask me to go back to a slide because you want to see something. Yeah, we are sort of open to thoughts, and that's sort of our update where we are currently. And we are very excited to have nearly 30 people here. So please, how can we help?
I had a question. It seemed like a lot of the frustrations, and I know some of the challenges I have is just with getting accurate data to be able to track student completion on the FAFSA. So I know there's some outside companies that are creating some tools to track like where exactly on the FAFSA the student's at. I think Going Mary is one of them. I know there's some data sharing concerns with our district on using an outside company. So one of the questions my counselors had, are there talks with CSAC and web grants that they're going to be improving the reports that we can get?
I'm going to jump in here, if that's okay. Sarah, I work with the California College Guidance Initiative, and we are the state's college and career planning tool. And we actually have an agreement with CSAC to help educators track students' financial aid applications. So when students launch their FAFSA or CADA through our platform, their transcript data or their student information gets linked to their application. And from there, educators will be able to pull reports on application statuses, such as whether or not they launched, submitted, or completed the financial aid application. It's a free tool to use, and I'm happy to answer any questions or follow up with you if you want to learn more about our reporting tools.
And that's what we started using, but
Mhm.
we found that with the CCGI, because we were one of the initial partner schools, so we've worked with them with you guys for a while. But the biggest challenge is that it's another step to launch it through California colleges. So a lot, like I think less than half of our kids launch through California colleges, and then it's the same information that we get from CSAC. It's just if they've started and submitted, and then but like. I think to be able, if we're trying to get to 100%, we need more detailed information. Like if they've submitted, but just missing signature page, even if we could start getting information if a kid created their FSA ID, so we haven't found that the CCGI tool has been useful for us yet, because it is still that basic same information we can get from CSAC.
Yeah, that's helpful to know. I will say that in terms of launching, different districts have used different strategies to use an all-in approach to launching at the same time, so that all students launch on October 1st, so that you can capture all that data in terms of, the same, as to your point, the same statuses that CSAC is able to provide you. But I'm happy to also, I'm taking notes on what these needs are. And so I will definitely bring that back to our team as well. So thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you much, Sarah. And thank you, Joanne, for answering that. Anyone else can please feel free to jump on in or raise a hand if that makes you more comfortable. I see Dr. Lee just came off mute.
I did. When you said feel free, I was gonna hold back, but then you said feel free. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going in. I just want to go back to what I mentioned about the loan forgiveness, because I think I actually just defended my dissertation. So I couldn't afford all of the degrees. So I do have a lot of student loan debt. And it's just passionate on my heart at this time, because I think we're the best PR. So when we can talk about our experience and how we got there, what it's been like, even if there was consideration for somebody like myself or anyone that wanted to figure out ways that they could forgive some of their loan debt, maybe doing some work with, college affordability or some type of program or opportunity if we can't get it together on the federal level, but just some resources for that so that we can share with students. And we don't necessarily feel like we may be kind of offering them something and we can't attest to how it works out in the end as far as the financial commitment. Oh, and then also when for CCGI, when I looked, because our district isn't partnered, but when I looked at the financial aid lessons, and I don't know if there's somewhere else specifically I should be looking, but maybe something a little bit more with a little more breadth if that could be available, that'd be helpful as well.
I'm sorry, Dr. Are you talking about the breadth of the lesson plans or
Yes.
access to them?
Yes.
So are you saying in terms of like the more comprehensive in terms of like financial literacy? Because we do have modules starting 6th grade that are then they progress by grade level. So by 12th grade, it's really focusing on the process of filling out the financial aid application and providing checklists in that way. But prior to 12th grade, students have are able to go through different modules to really learn the greater context of the types of aid and all of that. I'm happy to reach out and provide you more information. Perfect.
I wasn't sure, Jennifer VH. I wasn't sure if I saw your hand come up. If not, I won't continue to put the spotlight on you, but I thought I saw your hand come up.
Oh, I just clapped.
That is a form of hands coming up. So thank you.
I was clapping earlier for Dr. Lee getting her PhD. That's a huge win.
I particularly cannot answer questions about the Race to Submit site, and I don't think we have this particular expertise. However, I do work with CSEC, and if there are questions that I might be able to answer, like even ask them, I can.
I can answer the question about the numbers submitted isn't the same as number completed. And that's because of those issues such as the parent signature, such as submitting the GPA verification form. So when the status is completed, it means that the process is complete for the student beyond just the financial aid application, which the student submits. Does that answer your question? Okay, yes.
All right.
The nice thing about having Westhead, uAspire, and CSEC is even if you're not sure this is the right group to ask the questions, this is the right group to answer the questions. This is the right group to ask the questions because they are the group that can make a note. These are the issues that are happening. These are questions that are happening and get them to the right people. I see there's another question. Will there be anything on the website about implications of opting out and resources to help reduce opt-outs or strategies to opt back in?
We are working with CSEC now to sort of design what the opt-out portion of our site looks like. We haven't particularly talked about like how describing implications or describing strategies for not opting out. We haven't had that conversation yet. I imagine we are open to a conversation like that and thinking about like how a site like ours so at least gets resources in hands for folks who are unsure about if they should opt out or not and what that may mean for them. So to answer your question, no, we don't have that answer yet, but we are certainly having those conversations about what that may look like, and CSEC is at the forefront of that.
And I'll also add that with everything that Quay just said in terms of what's happening currently, the legislation also could use some additional strengthening on accountability around opt-out. So while that is a longer term conversation and project, that is something that this group here is continuing to keep an eye on. Many bills go through a cleanup process after it becomes after the bill launches, and we see how it's working, which is the importance of being here today with everybody for the next 2 days, and then what needs to go back and actually be strengthened. And we do know that the opt-out data, metrics, and accountability portions have already been identified as part of legislative strengthening that, again, this group here, particularly uAspire, has its eye on. So not a satisfactory answer to your question, but I think it's very important to also demonstrate that keeping a focus on implementation as Marlene said at the beginning, is key, and then figuring out how do we continue to stay student and counselor and stakeholder centered as we all move to 100% completion rate.
All right, it looks like we have a little addition here about website resources. If there is going to be website resources about the opt-out strategies to opt back in, if they can be available by role. Dr. Lee says, I think the leverage I hold as counselor for opt-out looks different than an administrator, career tech, etc. And if you notice, all the presenters on here keep looking down because we're all taking notes fast and furious. All right, it looks like we only have a couple of minutes left, so if anyone has any last thoughts.
All right, well, oh wait, I see a hand. Gabe, you can go ahead and come off mute.
Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't sure if I was going to say anything, but I'll go for it. So with the increase of schools having to have the FAFSA CADA completion now that it's a requirement, does CSAC, has there been an increase in resources available to you guys? I'm just thinking, okay, I have a question from a student. It's more important now. I mean, it's always important, I'm sorry, but I really need to get the help to assist this student. I see some heads nodding. Just want to make sure I'm going to be able to get the help that I need.
I have a comment to add, Clay. So in terms of the opt-out form, I don't know if it's been created already. It would be nice to have a reason why students are opting out. Because I know we are a council program and projects. I always convey to my staff that even the students say, no, I don't want to do it. They talk to the parents and the parents say, no, I don't want to do it. But then you also find another outlier, right? Teachers at the council might know the student more than we do and talk to them before we find out, okay, you know what? 5 or 6 different people talk to the students and family, they are opting out. Then yes, okay, let them opt out, right? It's just not one of those things where, oh, I want to opt out and let's be done with it. That's my main concern. Maybe having a school of 200 seniors and only 50 completed and 150 opt-out form submitted. So that's just a major concern. So I think we should put some language out there, like, reason why they are opting out, not just because the school district won't have 100% completion to fulfill the AB469, just using those opt form, like it's just like nothing, right? That's just my major concern.
And I'll quickly go back to the question, Robert, that you asked before. So I'm going to put a plug in for the session tomorrow at 10:50. The title is Innovative Practices to Financial Aid Completion while utilizing your current funding. So the focus of that session is actually going to be how districts can use their LCAPs to ensure that this type of work being required under AB 469 is more clearly identified in your LCAP, and then your funding can flow from there. This is also a big, if you also want to reach out to me or anyone else, any of the presenters on this team, there's another strategy that we are unlocking because this bill does not come necessarily with direct funding. There is an approach that we've been asking districts if they would be willing to submit a test claim to the state. I'm not going to get into the gory details, but there's another way that we are trying to unlock additional funding in addition to LCAP strategies, etc. So if anybody's interested in that, either reach out to any of us here, or you can put your name in the Jamboard. If you're willing to help us figure out another strategy to unlock funding directly through this legislation, please do let us know, because the more test claims we can submit and districts and schools can submit, the better conversation we can have with the state about adding more resources to this work and ensuring that AB 469 truly meets its goals.
Thank you for that very detailed explanation. I don't know if anyone saw that Jennifer, she is here. Hi, Jen. If you want to say hi. She is the person working on the design here. Go ahead, Jen. I saw you come off mute.
Hello, just wanted to say hi. I'm Jennifer Van Hardenberg. I'm working as the UX user experience designer on this project through WestEd.
And she just put in the chat that she, again, because I think we're hearing a lot of great feedback, and we really invite everyone to sign up for an opportunity. Again, it's not a guarantee that we're going to like put you in some room to look at the site or anything. It's just more like you are saying that feel free to reach out to me to see if I'm available to talk. It's not, you're not signing up for a time as of now. You're just saying it's okay to call me and say, we have this opportunity. Okay, well, this has been great. Thank you all for your engagement and participation and your feedback. Thank you to my colleagues for all the support and question answering. And Gil, I'm going to give it back to you.
Thanks, Quinn. What an amazing session. I think I know some of this stuff, and I'm learning every morning too. So I really appreciate the expertise that the panelists brought to us. So please know that the presentation materials are going to be available on Sketch, the event platform. The recordings will be posted on the CSAC event webpage by tomorrow. We also welcome you to use Sketch to provide feedback so we continue to provide you with the support you need to implement the upcoming application completion requirement. Okay, so I really, again, want to shout out to the participants today. Thank you so much for participating and joining. As far as those who are joining in, okay, great questions all the way around the room. And we're going to follow up and follow through. This is about our kids and our kids' future. So we really appreciate the intensity and the intention of this morning's meeting. So we're going to give you a couple minutes to break out at this point in time. And then we're going to be heading back into the main room for the next session. Thank you so much for joining us.